Thank you for being here. Mr. Hamilton, let me ask you, sort of following up on some of the questions that I asked Ms. Dillon after her testimony, that a lot of these, discriminatory efforts, these divisive efforts couched as DEI, there's a lot more awareness now of what that really is. 5 years ago, maybe not so much. The flowery language sort of cloaked the discriminatory aim. Where do you see this headed now? There's still work to do there, and she's doing the work, and I think you'll probably see more other causes of action from individuals even probably pop up. But whether it's social emotional learning or community, whatever the term might be, what are you seeing out there that is sort of DEI by another name?
That is a really good question, because we've seen in some cases corporations, universities, other institutions take on and actually abandon some of these exclusionary programs and policies. But in many other cases, they seem to be just deleting the language or changing the language and morphing to things, trying to fly under the radar long enough to think that they're going to evade federal enforcement or they're going to evade private liability. And so what do I think is going to happen? Where do I see things going? I think I see with this Department of Justice, with organizations like mine and others, a renewed awareness and commitment through education, through litigation, through everything in between to make Americans aware and to make corporate leaders, make the C-suite and the university administrators aware that discriminating against American citizens, whether you can call it any name you want, call it any kind of program, but any program that discriminates against an American citizen or reserves something for another citizen and provides a benefit, whether that's in terms of an employment, whether that's in terms of education access, whether that's in terms of anything of the sort, that is discriminatory and there is liability. There is actual liability that will attach to it. We're proud at America First Legal to represent many individuals who have had successful resolutions of their claims of this type of discrimination, whether in the private context, whether in the public context, everywhere in between. But what it's going to take is more attention, more spotlighting, just like you're doing with this particular hearing, to make the American people aware and to educate everyone of what Congress did when it passed the plain statute, Title VII, Title VI, again, Title IX. If you just return to the plain text, and we're all textualists these days, if you return to the plain text of those statutes, there is no discrimination that's permitted against an American citizen on those bases.
I want to talk, with the time, 2 minutes I have left, touch on sort of two topics that are somewhat related. And I think for a lot of people, like normal people out there that don't live in this like radical racialization of America that many of the elites and those on the left have pushed, they don't understand where this comes from. Corporations are supposed to, they hire people, they make money, but this sort of insidious corporate equality index that many of them chase, that sort of puts out there as this carrot, you're going to get a great rating, and we're going to talk about how great you are, and it's funded by, that partially by Soros and all these groups that are chasing this clout. Inherent in that, then, are these exclusive discriminatory policies to get a higher equity rating. It seems to me that probably what needs to happen is there need to be a couple of massive lawsuits and a couple of massive judgments against companies. I mean, I'm not going to, single out any in particular. Target seems to be sort of an example, but there's a lot of them out there. Do you think that as a litigation strategy might be something that should be pursued?
Yes. This is the short answer. The longer answer is that I think that will bear out over the next year to 2 years.
Yeah.
There will be massive liabilities imposed on corporations that they were not expecting and that will change the world forever.
Yep. And then we've talked a lot about university criteria and quotas. One of the things, again, that I think people don't understand, I certainly saw it in my time as Attorney General in Missouri, school districts you wouldn't expect, Springfield School District, not in St. Louis, Kansas City, Springfield, Missouri, had some of the most radical materials in front of, not only in front of kids, but part of the trainings. Mostly, CRT is not a class. Well, the fact is, if you teach and train every administrator and teacher to view the race and separate the room by oppressor and oppressed, then that's it. That becomes a part of the entire curriculum. Where do you see that coming from? What influences it? How does it get from the think tanks in Washington, D.C. to Springfield, Missouri? What is the apparatus you've identified? How does that happen?
What happens based on the records that we've already identified is there's a whole entire consulting industry that's driven, and there's an ecosphere that's built up, supported by this consulting industry with NGOs, a lot of money driving these things to pay for these things, and they teach and they just spread this knowledge across the entire country. And as a for example, we uncovered one of the first things that our organization did maybe in 2021-22 is we uncovered records from a school district in Pennsylvania that showed definitively that CRT was being actually used in a school district. They were in fact teaching CRT, and they had a little diagram and it funneled everything, and it was at the time when everyone was saying, oh no, this is just a fib of the right. This is something that doesn't actually exist. But there's an entire monetary driver that is creating this, that is spreading this, that had been spreading this across the country. And I think that over time, whether we look at antitrust enforcement, whether we look at other private civil liability, there's a lot of other things here that are going to weaken the ability of them to perpetuate the spread of this type of information.
It's the head of the snake. I mean, the oppression matrix, grade school kids being forced to engage in privilege walks, it's totally insane. Senator Welch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Stewart,